They say the forest only whispers to people who still remember what silence sounds like. And on nights when the wind slows down enough to hear your own heartbeat, some claim you can catch a shimmer between the trees, not a shadow, not a trick of the moonlight, but something alive. Something ancient. Something watching. I never believed those stories, not until the night I followed a glow that didn't belong to the stars. It started with a sound. Not a voice, not really, more like a sigh carried through the branches, soft enough to ignore but strange enough to notice. I stood on the edge of Blackwood Forest, a place locals warn tourists to stay out of after dusk. Not because of animals. Not because of danger. But because of legends so old that nobody remembered who first told them. They just said, if the forest calls your name, don't answer. But I did. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the kind of emptiness you feel after losing too much too fast, when you start searching for meaning in places humans abandoned long ago. Or maybe I was simply tired of pretending that magic died with old stories. Either way, I stepped across the threshold of the trees and the world changed. The wind stopped. The insects went quiet. And the glow, the soft blue shimmer, drifted deeper into the forest like it wanted me to follow. So I did, careful, slow, listening to every breath of the night. My footsteps crunched over pine needles as the moonlight thinned, replaced by something brighter than darkness but dimmer than daybreak. The air felt heavier, older, almost like it remembered things I didn't. The deeper I went, the more I felt watched. Not threatened, just observed, like the forest was deciding if I was worth revealing its secrets to. And that's when I saw it. A flicker. A ripple of soft silver light between the branches. It moved like it wasn't made of flesh but of air. Shimmering wings, thin as breath, glowed for half a second before vanishing behind a tree. My heart slammed against my ribs. Every story I'd ever heard, every myth, every grandmother's warning suddenly felt less like fiction and more like memory, something humans had forgotten but the world hadn't. People think fairies are tiny winged creatures in children's books. But the thing I saw wasn't small, or cute, or harmless. It was tall, slender, glowing like the reflection of a moon on water. Its wings didn't flap, they drifted behind it like smoke caught in still air. I took one step forward. A twig snapped, and the creature turned toward me. Its eyes weren't human. They were too large, too bright, too reflective, like polished opal soaking up the moonlight. But the moment its gaze met mine, I felt something unexpected. Not fear, not danger, but recognition. As if it had been waiting for me. The air around us hummed, low and soft, like the earth itself was speaking through vibrations. I didn't move. Couldn't. The creature tilted its head slightly, studying me like it was reading something beneath my skin. Not thoughts, not memories, intentions. Then softly the forest breathed again. Leaves rustled. Light expanded around the creature, wrapping it in glowing threads of blue and gold, swirling like dust caught in sunbeams. And in a voice that didn't come from its mouth but from everywhere at once, from the trees, from the wind, from inside my chest, it spoke. You came. The words didn't sound like language. They sounded like emotion carved into sound. Like relief mixed with warning. I whispered, "What are you?" It blinked, slowly, the air shimmering with every movement. "You call us fairies," it answered, though I knew that wasn't their real name. "We call ourselves what the forest called us first." I didn't understand, not yet. But the creature stepped closer, and the glow around it softened, like it didn't want to scare me. Humans think nature is silent. But it isn't. Everything speaks. The trees, the streams, the stones buried beneath centuries of forgotten footsteps. Fairies, the creature explained without words, were simply the ones who listen long enough to understand. They were born from the oldest parts of nature, formed from the first breath of the world before humans built stories around them. "Why show yourself to me?" I asked, barely breathing. Its wings shimmered like liquid moonlight. "Because you heard the call." I wanted to ask what call, but the creature lifted its hand, slender, glowing, made of something that didn't look solid, and pointed deeper into the forest. And suddenly the trees moved. Not with wind. Not with animals. They shifted subtly, like they were revealing a path that didn't exist a moment ago. A corridor of ancient trunks and twisting branches opened in the darkness, illuminated by faint golden dust floating in the air. "The forest remembers you," the creature whispered, and then it began walking. I followed without choosing to. Something pulled at me, curiosity, awe, maybe even destiny. The air smelled like wet moss and something sweeter underneath, like flowers that bloomed only under moonlight. My feet moved on instinct, like they'd walked this path before, in another life or another dream. As we walked, the creature spoke, not in words but in memories. Images flashed in my mind. The earth when it was young, covered in forests untouched by humans. Creatures made of light rising from roots like spirits waking from sleep. Ancient storms carving mountains into shape. Rivers whispering secrets to the air. Nature alive in ways humans once understood but later forgot. Fairies were not guardians, not protectors. They were lessons. Each one represented a part of nature humans stopped paying attention to. The cycle of growth and decay, the balance between beauty and danger, the way every living thing depended on something else. They weren't here to bless humans. They weren't here to harm them either. They were simply reminders of truths we turned into myths when we no longer wanted to hear them. The creature stopped suddenly in front of a massive tree, taller than any redwood I'd ever seen, its bark shimmering faintly like it was dusted with starlight. "This is the elder," the creature said in a tone that felt like reverence. "The first tree that chose to remember." I stared at the trunk. It seemed to breathe. "What does it remember?" The creature stepped aside so I stood directly before the tree. Everything humans forgot. When I touched the bark, warmth spread through my fingers, not heat but life. And a flood of vision surged into me so fast I staggered back. I saw forests older than recorded history. I saw humans living in harmony with land, not controlling it. I saw creatures made of wind and creatures born from flame. I saw fairies shimmering across rivers, whispering to plants, guiding migrations of animals through instinct and energy, not force. Then the visions turned darker. I saw forests burning, oceans choking, creatures fading like smoke, fairies collapsing into dust because the nature that created them was dying. The creature watched me silent. "Why show me this?" I whispered, breath shaking. Its wings dimmed, shadows crawling around its edges. "Because nature is speaking again, and fewer humans are listening." The forest around us rustled in agreement, a low, eerie sound like a warning. "Teach me," I said without fully understanding why. The creature studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. "You must see what humans chose not to. You must learn what fairies have always known." The air around us shifted. The light dimmed. And before I could speak, the ground trembled lightly beneath my feet. Not enough to frighten me, just enough to let me know something deep underground had awakened. The creature lifted its hand and the world changed again. Light burst from the roots of the elder tree, swirling upward in spirals of green and gold. It wrapped around me, warm at first, then cold enough to sting. I closed my eyes instinctively, and for a second, everything vanished. When I opened them, we weren't in the forest anymore. We stood in a world that looked like nature's memory, a realm where roots glowed, rivers shimmered with blue fireflies, and the air itself felt alive. It was beautiful and terrifying at once, like staring at the world before time had the chance to wound it. "This is the first garden," the creature said softly, "where all fairies were born, where nature first learned to dream." My breath caught, and then I heard it, a sound like distant crying. But it wasn't human. It came from the glowing roots, from the rivers, from the sky that pulsed with dimming light. A collective sorrow, a quiet grief. The creature looked at me, wings dimming. "Do you hear it?" I nodded slowly. "That is the sound of nature remembering what it lost." A chill ran down my spine. The creature stepped closer, its voice a whisper of both hope and mourning. "You came because you still believe there is magic left in the world. But belief alone will not be enough. You must understand the truth behind our existence, the lesson humans forgot." The light above us flickered, suddenly unstable. Shadows crawled across the sky. The crying grew louder. The creature's expression darkened. "We don't have much time," it said urgently. "Something is coming. Something that should not have awakened." The ground beneath us cracked. The sky shuddered. The light dimmed until the entire first garden was soaked in shadow. The creature grabbed my arm, cold, desperate. "Run." And before I could ask why, the world split open with a roar that didn't sound like nature at all. The roar ripped through the first garden like the sky itself was being torn apart. Light twisted, bending into shapes that didn't belong to the natural world. The glowing roots beneath my feet cracked open with a surge of blinding white energy, and the creature pulling my arm tightened its grip so hard the shimmer of its hand flickered like it was losing form. I stumbled backward as the ground heaved, the air trembling with a force that didn't feel alive but also not dead. Something in between, something ancient and wrong. The rivers of blue fireflies dimmed all at once. The distant crying of nature faded into a low, trembling silence that felt worse than any scream. Silence that heavy didn't belong in a living world. "What's happening?" I shouted, but the words drowned in a second roar, deeper this time, vibrating through bone and thought. The creature didn't answer. Its wings stretched wide, glowing brighter than before, like it was trying to hold itself together. The soft blues and silvers of its body shifted into harsher tones. Copper, gold, a struggling pulse of white that flickered like a candle about to go out. It pulled me behind a cluster of ancient roots that rose from the ground like massive pulsing ribs. They thrummed with fading light, casting just enough glow to see the fear in the creature's opal eyes. "This wasn't supposed to wake yet," it whispered, voice trembling not from exhaustion but from knowing too much. "The corruption shouldn't be this strong. Not here. Not in the first garden." "Corruption?" I echoed, breath shaking. "What does that mean? What's waking up?" The creature leaned closer, so close that I could see the thin cracks forming along the edges of its wings, like glass under too much pressure. "It started as a shadow," it said quietly. "Long before humans walked the earth. Before forests grew, before oceans formed, the world held an imbalance. A hunger left over from the beginning. Everything that exists casts a shadow, even nature. Especially nature." The ground rumbled again. A distant explosion of light illuminated the sky, showing a silhouette rising from the cracked horizon, huge, shapeless, like darkness made solid. The creature swallowed hard, or whatever the fairy equivalent was. "We call it the Hollow." A cold rush slid down my spine. "The absence of life?" I asked. "No," its voice dropped lower. "The appetite for it." The air shifted, growing colder. The light within the roots snapped, flickering violently. The creature put its hand gently over my heart, not touching but hovering inches away. I felt the air around it vibrate. "Listen to me. Fairies aren't symbols of innocence. We aren't guardians meant to save the world. We are warnings. Lessons. Nature created us to keep balance, not to fight darkness." Its eyes dimmed. "The Hollow isn't darkness. Darkness is still alive. This is something that devours life itself." A shriek tore through the air, not an animal sound, not a human scream. It was like metal grinding against a heartbeat. The sky warped, the colors twisting into a sickly palette of grays and reds. The fairy flinched, wings curling defensively around its body. "We have to move," it said urgently. "If the Hollow enters this realm completely, the first garden will die. And if the first garden dies, the world dies," I finished. The creature nodded slowly. "Run where?" I asked, spinning around. The first garden was collapsing in every direction. Roots breaking, rivers boiling, the sky folding like torn sheets of light. "To the Luminarch Gate," it said, grabbing my wrist. "It's the oldest passageway between realms. If we reach it, we can seal the first garden before the Hollow consumes it." Seal it? Lock it? That meant leaving something behind. Something alive, something important. But I didn't have time to ask. The creature pulled me forward, its wings igniting with a burst of white-blue flame as it lifted just enough to move faster. My feet stumbled over uneven roots that pulsed with fading life. The landscape twisted, the garden reshaping itself in panic as it tried to protect us. Roots rising, branches bending, ground shifting like it was alive and terrified. I could feel the Hollow approaching, not through sight but through sensation. A cold emptiness pressing against the edges of reality. Like standing close to a place where sound goes to die. We sprinted, or rather, I ran while the creature half-guided, half-dragged me, toward a ridge made of braided roots. Above it, a distant glow pulsed like a heartbeat struggling to stay lit. "The gate?" I gasped. "Yes," it said, breath shaking. "But it's fading too." Behind us, another roar echoed. This one closer. Too close. A shockwave tore through the ground and I was flung forward, landing hard on my side. The fairy screeched, a raw, pained sound, as its wings slammed against a jagged shard of glowing rock that erupted from the ground. The creature collapsed. "No," I scrambled to my knees, reaching for it. Its wings bent at an unnatural angle, cracks spreading like frost over glass. It tried to rise but winced, pain rippling through its shimmering form. "Go," it whispered. "I'm not leaving you," I said, pulling its arm over my shoulder. It stared at me, confusion in its eyes, confusion turning to something softer, something like disbelief. "Humans?" It exhaled a shuddering breath. "Always surprising." We moved together, slow but determined. The ridge grew closer, its glow brighter. But the air behind us grew cold, unnaturally, impossibly cold, and the light in front of us flickered again. I looked back. My breath froze in my chest. The hollow didn't have a body. It didn't need one. It rose from the cracked horizon like a void taking shape, a rippling mass of shadow and hunger, stretching tendrils of nothingness that dissolved anything they touched. Plants shriveled. Rivers turned black. Light dimmed as though swallowed whole. It was erasing the world. A tendril lashed toward us. The fairy threw out its hand, creating a shield of glowing energy. The impact was violent, too violent. The shield shattered like glass made of starlight, and the fairy screamed as the force slammed into its body. I caught it before it hit the ground completely. It trembled, glowing weakly. "The gate," it whispered. "We're almost there," I said, voice cracking. I wasn't sure if that was true. The hollow was gaining speed, devouring the garden as if it had waited eons for this moment. We reached the top of the ridge, and the sight punched the air from my lungs. The Luminarch Gate was beautiful. A massive arch of glowing roots intertwined with beams of white fire and drifting silver dust. It pulsed like a living sunrise, radiating warmth in a world collapsing into cold. But it was fading. The edges dimmed. The core flickered. The fairy sagged in my arms, its wings nearly dull now. "You have to go through," it whispered. "We're both going through," I insisted. It shook its head. "The gate can only close from this side. And someone must stay to seal it." Those words hit me like a blow. "No," I said. "No, I'm not leaving you here to die." It looked up at me, expression soft, ancient, tired. "If I die, I return to the Elder. If the Elder survives, so do I. But if the gate stays open, the hollow reaches your world. Humanity, nature, everything." My throat tightened. Another tremor shook the garden. The hollow's tendrils expanded, ripping through the ridge below us. The landscape fell apart, a cascade of roots and glowing debris crashing down. The fairy cupped my cheek with a flickering hand. "You were chosen by the call. Not to witness, to act." I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. "I don't know how to close a gate." "You don't have to." It smiled faintly. "You just have to trust nature." Another tendril shot toward us. The fairy pushed me hard. I stumbled backward through the Luminarch Gate. Light swallowed me whole. The last thing I saw before the brilliance consumed my vision was the fairy turning toward the hollow, wings outstretched, light rising around its broken form like a dying star refusing to fade. Then a sound, like a door slamming shut across an entire universe. And everything went black. For a moment I didn't breathe. Couldn't. Then soft wind brushed against my skin. Warm. Familiar. Human. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on a forest floor. But not the first garden. Blackwood forest. Night. Stars. Earth. The world I knew. But something was wrong. The trees were shaking, not with wind but with warning. The air pulsed in a sharp, unnatural rhythm. And deep in the forest, past the shadows and branches, a faint glow flickered. Not normal light. Not moonlight. A glow that looked like a cracked door. A leak. The gate wasn't fully closed. In the hollow, something of it had come through. The glow pulsed again between the trees, faint but wrong, like a crack in reality leaking light that didn't belong to this world. Blackwood forest felt tighter, smaller, as if the air knew something ancient had crossed into a place it was never meant to enter. I pushed myself to my feet, heart pounding, the scent of moss mixing with something cold and metallic drifting through the branches. The fairy had stayed behind to close the gate. But something still slipped through. Something small maybe. Something dangerous. The hollow didn't need size. Even a fragment could spread like a sickness. I moved toward the flickering glow, every step sinking into dead leaves that suddenly felt too brittle. Branches snapped overhead. Shadows shifted as though watching. The forest that had once felt alive now felt alert, nervous. Then I saw it. A single tendril of darkness, thin as smoke, drifting low across the forest floor like a hungry whisper. It curled around a fallen leaf. The leaf blackened instantly, crumbling into dust that vanished before it hit the ground. My breath hitched. The hollow was here. But before fear could turn into panic, a soft light shimmered above me. Not bright, tired, weakened, but familiar. The fairies' glow. It wasn't the creature itself, not in full shape. Just a fragment of its presence, like a memory struggling to stay alive. A silhouette of soft silver light hovered above the cracked patch of air where the tendril leaked through. "You came back," I whispered. The light flickered, forming the faint outline of wings. "The gate held," the fairy's voice echoed gently. "But the hollow is persistent. It left a shard in your world. You must end it before it spreads." "How?" I asked, stepping closer, watching the tendril writhe like it could sense me. The fairy's fading light settled near my chest, warm, steady. "Nature remembers you," it whispered. "And you remember it. That connection is your strength." The tendril snapped toward me. I stumbled back, but something stopped it, a glow rising from the ground beneath my feet, small at first, then growing brighter. Moss illuminated. Roots pulsed with warm light. The trees, once trembling, straightened as if waking from fear. I wasn't alone. The forest was standing with me. The fairy's warmth spread through my chest, down my arms into my hands. The air thickened, humming with the same vibration I'd felt in the first garden. The tendril lashed again, but this time I stepped forward instead of back. Light surged from my palms. Not controlled. Not forced. Just released, the way nature releases storms, rain, sunlight, growth. The tendril recoiled, shrieking in soundless agony. It twisted, thrashed, then evaporated into harmless dust that fell like soft ash onto the forest floor. Silence returned. A peaceful silence. The fairy's glow dimmed, shrinking like a candle finishing its final breath. "You did it," it whispered. "Are you going back?" I asked softly. "To the elder," it said. "To heal. To remember. But our worlds are connected now because you listened. Because you acted." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of everything that had happened crashing into one long, overwhelming truth. "What will happen next?" I whispered. The fairy's light drifted upward, shimmering faintly against the branches. "Nature will speak again. And you will hear it." A pause, soft as moonlight. "And when it calls, you won't be alone." The light faded, dissolving into tiny silver sparks that floated upward and vanished into the canopy. The forest sighed, a warm, living breath, and for the first time the night didn't feel empty. It felt connected, alive, awake. What fairies teach us about nature isn't magic. It's memory. It's balance. It's the reminder that the world breathes with us and dies without us. And that everything alive, every tree, every river, every winged creature born from light, is part of the same story. I turned toward the path back home, moonlight guiding the way through the quiet trees. The air whispered softly, like a thank you carried through leaves. And somewhere far beyond what I could see, in a realm only fairies could walk, the first garden glowed again. A second chance. A promise. A warning. And a beginning. If you believe in the unseen, subscribe to Fairy Mystery, where every story hides a secret waiting to be found.